SPAC friends and family. It's shortly after 2 o'clock here on the West Coast, and it's Tuesday, so you know it must be time for SPAC Chat. So it is spring, so we are kicking off SPAC Chat with a whole bunch of spring topics that we know are important to your business. So today we've really got a good one about schools. Last week we talked about sports. This week it's all about schools. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our host, Calvin Harrell.
Hey there,
Hi,
folks.
Calvin.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
I'm well, Miss Corey. You didn't give me my normal daily call, but that's okay. We've been online today a couple of times already. Welcome to another edition of SPAC Chat, folks. You know, we've got a lot of things going on, things that we have to be reactive to and things that we need to be proactive to. And I don't know what that noise and static is, but we'll deal with it. There are things that we have to be both reactive and proactive to. And so one of the things that we're going to do at the start of this conversation regarding sales, so it really came up on a very opportune time for us to have a discussion. And I'm going to bring on some people that are in the middle of it that have been studying it and looking at it. Let's bring up Neil Lester, Kate Clark, Wayne Barksdale, and Brad Scott. You all know them as superb sales representatives, superb business operators, and that sort of thing. So let's just see what they think about this new thing called GovMVNT. That's M like Mary, VMT. It's been a new development it's a development that is being used as a technique to garner district-wide accounts. And I'm going to jump to Wayne first to get started with it.
Fantastic. Hey, folks, how are you today?
Doing great.
Hey, Corey, can you flip that little slide up real quick? Hey, guys, how are we today? I thought I would share this. Neil and Brad, you may already be familiar with it, but we've just recently found a few school districts that have gone this avenue, and it's from the East Coast to the West Coast. And, you know, we had a brief, I'll say brief, it was a couple-hour board meeting today about this organization. It's a nonprofit, although it's a little misleading here. You would think that it's part of the government, but it is not. It is a nonprofit organization, and it's a way for school districts to find another vendor. It's a cooperative, as I mentioned. It's almost like a consultant in some kind of strange way. And the problem that we're seeing in kind of just briefly the two districts that we've stumbled upon is that by the time it happens to you, it's too late. You may have already lost some of those schools, and it feels like you're kind of not sure what to do. And I've outlined a quick little slide. There's not enough time in this little demo today to talk really deep into it. We promise you in another 2 weeks, there's another RFP SPAC chat that I'll dig a little deeper into it and maybe offer some other suggestions of what you might want to do. Not sure if once it happens you can do anything about it, but more of a, as Calvin mentioned, a proactive kind of piece. As I mentioned, it's a non-government cooperative. They are going after any kind of either a school photographer, but there's only one allowed in the country into this bucket. And there's all different headings or categories that you could be in there on. But once you do, there's a little funding model from that. The participating vendors must agree to pay a fee to this GovMVNT. And then that fee goes to them. And of course, we don't really like fees. They're like commissions to us. And we're trying to get away from that as much as we can. So now you have one more agency inside here that's looking for, I believe it's as much as 10% of the revenue that you will generate. And then, of course, how they've been able to kind of sneak the path, and depending upon what your scope of business is, Brad and Neil, I think, Neil, you may know a little bit more about this than we do at times, is that if you're already involved in, you know, one of those RFP watchdogs that kind of give you an opportunity to see an RFP that might be coming up, but that's typically for us, we would all see that be under school photography or yearbooks. There's some classifications that we would log into that school watch that we would look at. And then any RFP that would come up, it would be in that category, and boom, there you go. And then you would decide whether you wanted to maybe place a bid on it. But in this particular case, this organization, along with, one of our friends of foe of LifeTouch, they found a way to kind of circumvent the system in a kind of a strange way. They've come in a different category. It could be safety ID cards or something like that. That's some search that we would not be looking for. And a couple of these instances came in. They've piggybacked off of another RFP someplace in the middle of the country. And if we're not in that area doing business and you're not really paying attention to it, and your category isn't aligned with the category that they just made up for that RFP, you're out of luck. And that has been the instance on the East Coast in one area and then on the West Coast in the other area. And from our limited knowledge at this point, we believe that there'll be a few more that may happen. I'm not quite sure the correct number. We're hearing upwards of 40 to 50 through the country. And that may or may not affect us. But even if you're not involved in the RFPs, you are involved in a kind of independent school thinking where the principal makes their own decision there. What we're finding out in those two districts that I've mentioned, East Coast, West Coast, is that the school principals didn't even know that this went back out to an RFP. The business manager has taken it upon themselves and made that decision before the building level even knew that. So if you're a smaller independent organization and you've really never dug into a RFP, this particular district could have been an RFP for you without your knowledge. And the opportunity of those 5 schools, 10 schools, 15 schools were no longer yours. So as I mentioned earlier, we'll dig a little deeper. We'll have a few more strategies to see what we can do. But I think at this point, stay close to your schools, although you may have already renewed them. That RFP process could be already in motion, or they've already made a decision. And by the time you call back that school for the flyers, they may say, hey, we've decided to go a different direction. We all know what that feels like at times, and that's always not a comfortable place.
And I think it's important, Wayne, I appreciate that information, but I think it's also important to understand that what we have in the form of a contract is an agreement, and they can terminate at any time they desire. That's been the way it is. You can fight them all you want, but success is a real hard thing to pull in fighting large government entities, et cetera. And then your name goes on the list of not easy to work with. It's just, this is a new sales technique that's being used. Be aware of it, and expand your contact list to include the people at the district level in the office purchasing departments. That is
great idea. I mean, like I said, we spent the SPAC board spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours on this conversation, and it wasn't necessarily to put people into a panic. It was more of, hey, here's what's out here. To Calvin's point, your relationships might want to spawn further than just the building principal. Take yourself to that district level if you need to. It's here. We're going to do whatever we can at the SPAC level and as a community just to see if we could together find a way, draft something together for the building level and the superintendent or the business manager to say, hey, this deciding, governing GMVMT has very little experience in this industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brad.
Go ahead. I got a series of questions. I haven't heard of this. So
yeah, I'll jump in. I probably know more than the average bear. We actually had meetings with, they refer to themselves as Gov Movement. We talked with them prior to the school picture RFP going out, what was probably about 2 years ago. If you're not familiar with co-ops, speaking to the audience out there, if you're not familiar with co-ops like this, you need to make yourself familiar pretty quick. We are a part of several of them, all the acronyms you can think of, TCPN, NCPA, and the list goes on and on. What makes this Gov Movement unique? Yes, they do get a cut of everything that you sell through their services. I believe theirs was advertised at 1%, although the the RFP read a little bit differently. Other groups get a little more than that, maybe in the 2% range. But every other co-op that we've ever dealt with or been a part of was an approved vendor situation where they would have, 10 companies or whatever that met the criteria of their board or whoever it was on the committee that decided. And Gov Movement let us know from the beginning that they were going to approve one company. They were transparent about that. And so, hey, we made our response. It was with the Olathe School District there in Kansas. That's who is I forget how they worded on their website. They're the group that's, the head agency or whatever. I believe this is the second contract that Olathe had with them. I forget what the other one was or what the other service was. So yeah, and so basically, it's my opinion that Gov Movement was, they're probably looking for a nationwide company. So you can imagine there's, one of those that's going to say yes, we're a nationwide company, and lo and behold, that's who ended up getting the agreement. Right. Some co-ops do allow for that lead agency. There could be, I don't want to say kickbacks. That sounds a little underhanded, but if you're a lead agency and other school districts pick up this contract that you're the head from, there could potentially be an opportunity for them to make more money. I do know, in our responses, pricing, ours was very different than the pricing that was submitted by the group that won it. And even though it was as different as it was, we're not a nationwide company. We're photographing 26 states, but not as many as some other folks. So that's what I know. And this just in the first year of that contract. And we'll see. I believe it has the possibility of running through 2033. So it could be a long time, in the making, for this contract. However, Calvin, great advice. Make sure you're talking to people at district offices if you're not already. Should be in those, especially if it's an approved vendor situation, because Baltimore County moved from an approved vendor where we were located, where I'm sure Barksdale was located, to a one company when they piggybacked onto to this situation. So from a legal standpoint, I don't know that there's really much of anything. However, we can always point out, hey, is this in the best interest of the students and the parents as part of that district?
That I think is critical. You have to create your own narrative as to what the benefits are that you provide to that school site specific, and you have to have principles that are strong enough to advocate that they remain your partner in what you're doing. This is, for me, it is a shock to the system for those that are working with district-wide contracts or district contracts, or just coming up against this kind of a competitive situation where you don't know you don't know how to hunt right now because we're not sure what ammunition the other folks in the party are using. But it's a sales technique. In the beginning, let's face it, it was pictures and record pictures. That was the premium thing that we were doing in the industry back in the old days. It was photography, but there was a service component to the photography, and that was those giveaways that we had, the little pictures, which has expanded into a tremendous amount of additional products over the years. Then it became a fundraising vehicle because somebody got the bright idea. Hey, why don't we let's kick down some money? Either the school requested it or the photographer requested it, and the money started to flow into the schools and the commission structures. Some commissions are, as we know, outrageous by most standards, or by our standards anyway. But that was the next wave for sales. This is now appearing to be, while it's a bringing together a group of accounts through this channel, it's really the way that they're going about it is pitching it as a safety piece, from my understanding. Safety is a component that the school needs. So as you can see, we value our photography, the schools value the services they're going to receive, and the district office doesn't know who's doing what oftentimes. Here, they get to know who's doing what's being done. Every school gets the same, yada, yada, yada. Oftentimes, these types of, not this particular sales style or technique, but those district-wide contracts oftentimes are to ensure that underserved schools are getting service that's equitable to the more affluent schools in their particular district. Anybody else?
Can I ask you a couple questions? Neil, so what do you think the value is to the purchasing department to use these guys?
It's 2 points. No, it's not.
Well, if you're accustomed to using one vendor, then it's kind of status quo. We actually had a district. We've had multiple districts that we have been an exclusive provider for, and it came up time for their RFP to go out, and we can point to our national contract with this co-op and say, you know what? Don't even put the RFP out. Piggyback off of this thing and be done. You'll get to keep us, and they say yes. It's odd that you've got a district that switches from an approved vendor situation. Competition is great for the marketplace. We all know that. That will switch from that model to something else. Without administrative people in the schools or a committee or anything being aware of it. So they could be getting more in commission if you go with one company that could be offered. You should be able to see that in the response from the winning company. So do your due diligence on that and see what they promised.
Do you think the after Gov Movement decides on a vendor, do you think they refer back to the purchasing department for approval, or are they the sole determiner of who's going to be the selected?
I believe, and I don't want to talk out of school. But I believe I saw an email that said it was a national selection committee. So that would mean it would be people from outside the district. Now, the RFP, again, if you go to due diligence and find the RFP that was put out by Gov Movement and see it, you'll realize, it was 100+ pages long. And the first part of it was for the district, and the last part was the Gov Movement thing that had all of their information and their requirements and so forth. And none of that, and then compare that to the master agreement that they have in place, and a very, very different document. So you got to do your homework on it. So exactly what the schools or the district may be receiving, that's really hard to say. You'd have to look at that master agreement and see what it has in it. So
you did in the experience that you had, did you say the contract ended in 2033?
I think, and you could see that, but it's the initial term 5 years, and then there's an option to renew for 3, and then another option to renew for 2, and it has, I think, with the possibility of going until I think 2033, but don't quote me on there. But it's a heck of a lot longer than the standard RFPs would be good for.
And Neil, I think you said some smart things, and Calvin, you were right inside there too. Is know your customers. Be in front of those customers. You're in the district. You're talking to as many district people and possible, understanding what they're looking for. Satisfy that need. If not, they will go out, and as you just heard Neil, once it happens, you're done. I don't think there's any legalities that you can get in between there. There's nothing that's going to stop it. But it is something that we should all be aware of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing wrong. Everything is above board, what we can read anyway with this co-op or any other. So it is being aware and knowing what's going on, in your schools, keeping your face in that place to head off things like this, forming relationships that are outside of the school, that are at the district level, so that if somebody from a picture company or a co-op like this were to come sniffing around, and you've got people in place that will make you aware.
I think the consensus would be let's not fall asleep at it. Let's not get angry. We could all go different directions, so let's stay focused, and let's see what we can do to educate our customers of this. And I think that's our only battle, is whatever we can put together as an organization to help our attendees. And whatever the stronger, larger organizations that can help take this moving a little bit further.
Right on.
This is going to be an ongoing discussion, clearly, as people are just finding out about it, and it's probably impacting folks. We know here it's affected some things on the West Coast. We know things are on the East Coast. So we know that it's in motion. And quite honestly, we're late to the game to even figure it out. So this can be our organization can be a clearinghouse for you that are experiencing challenges in the marketplace that are directly tied to the marketing and sales piece and this type of thing that they've put together. We need to be aware of that when it hits the market, So when you get hit, there's no embarrassment in losing a school. At the end of the day, somebody did something different. They did something better. Not that their pictures are any better. They were more influential in their sales process. So let us know when something like this hits the market in your region. And then we're able to start to figure out, is this hitting everybody all over the country? And how do we respond as individuals in a collective environment? So I think that's a real valuable piece that we need to put together. All right, let's get to the topic of the day, folks. And that was talking about sales. And we've got folks in here. This is springtime. We're getting ready. A lot of folks have been doing it already, but it's time to canvas for new schools. There'll be yearbook accounts that open up because somebody didn't make delivery on time. There'll be school accounts that are still on the edge that haven't made decisions. And it's up to us to figure out who it is and who we talk to grow our own enterprises in our own regions. So let's go ahead and get started with Susan. This time of year, this is Susan at Barksdale Photography. She's one of the good ones, as all of them are. But Susan, share with us what your advice to folks hitting the market now, your reps, what are you giving them in the way of advice on how to navigate the landscape that we have?
My advice to them all is it's not too late. Please don't for a moment think that the sales cycle is over.
No.
As you said, there's plenty of opportunities still out there. So many schools don't fire their current vendor until the end of the school year. So just, keep making those phone calls, knocking on those doors. Don't give up. I think sometimes, because I met with the team here in California last week, they tend to get a little discouraged this time of year because as they're prospecting, they're hearing that we're already signed for next year. And they can sometimes think that, the season's over, there's no opportunities out there. So this time of year, just really keep motivating them to move forward and have those sales activities to find those schools that haven't re-signed, or maybe if they are re-signed, as you said, something goes sideways with the spring sale or yearbook, and they say, you know what, that's it. We're not gonna move forward with you.
I think that's absolutely accurate. Go ahead, Brad. I saw you. I think you were chomping a little bit to share some more.
Well, I don't know. I was just thinking about taking the approach of, when I'm going to be positive, when you get that opportunity to speak with a decision maker at a school, they have a need. No one wastes their time talking to just general photographers. So it's your job to try to figure out what their needs are and make that part of your presentation so you can address their needs. At the same time, and this is something in general, is develop your story. Always be working on your story so it's impactful. It addresses relationship building. Like, for example, what brought you into school photography? What's the background behind that? Not everybody, it's a unique industry. So what brought you here? What brought you to their school, their campus? What interested you about them? And what value can you bring now to that campus? And that's part of your investigative process, that you can solve these issues that they may be having. And but it's really important to create a story that brings them into you and brings trust and value. And it just sometimes that takes time, and some things work and some things don't. Some things are important to you, but not to them. So it's just something to constantly work on. And it's a good time to start at any time.
And I think it's so appropriate for you to say what's important to you may not be important to them. Oftentimes as photographers, folks get caught up in the beauty of the imagery. And the district never sees the dang images. They only want to listen for phone calls. If they don't get phone calls complaining, then their pictures must be beautiful, and that's the end of it. Guess what? A whole lot of senior administrators are the same way. We are way down on the list of important areas we have to avoid. We need to go under the radar. If we can get everything done under the radar, we're going to be far better off with anybody. Kate, jump on in and give us some insight at the beginning of this for this time of year with sales.
This time of year, I definitely encourage the reps that I work with to get into their cars a little bit more. At Barksdale, we have more of a telephone prospecting model, but in the spring, I like to encourage them to, if you're going to check on a school in this school district for spring, it's a balancing act between keeping the relationship with the schools you have. I think because the door kind of closes as every day goes by with selling new, I think in person is helpful, as you can kind of do a lot of things at once. You can drop off sales materials, you can identify who that person is who makes the decision, as well as understand who their current vendor is, and maybe if you don't have an opportunity this year, that you may have won the following year.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open. You can't make them change. They're going to change when they're ready to change. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And Neil, did we get to you already?
On this topic, no.
Yeah.
But I'll chime in real quick. A lot of similarities to what the others have said.
Yep.
We have goals for our team as far as percentages of your business that's going to be rebooked by going into the holidays, so that hey, if you've already got signatures for if the goal is 80% by December 15th, that's a whole lot of business that you don't have to worry about going in and rebooking once you get to the spring season, and you can focus on that. But then to agree with what Kate said, there, in my opinion, I'm old school, I guess. But I don't believe there's anything as good as being in front of your customers, physically being there. People don't want to fire their friends, and they don't. So we're going to make sure that we show up consistently, persistently. They're going to see the same face on picture day. It may not be the photographer himself, but they're going to be there on picture day. They're going to see him usually, once a month at least, stopping by and always bringing something, whether it might be a dozen donuts or a jar of jelly beans, who knows. But they're going to be in that school consistently, persistently, again, just to make sure that nobody has an opportunity to come in. But rebook early, and then you'll have more free time in the spring to, if you're calling on 10, 12, 15 schools a day, every no, you're that much closer to a yes is kind of our opinion on it. So just keep knocking on doors.
Yeah, and the other piece of that is look at your documentation. For me, certainly, look at your documentation. Do you tie them into a multi-year? And in tying them in, do you go back to reaffirm the multi-year every single year during the multi-year? Oftentimes, people assign a multi-year, it's 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They don't go back and they have that discussion. Say, hey, everything's cool, and here's an updated agreement with new details about what you'd like to do. It continues to keep you tied in. Neil, I really appreciate the idea that you're saying is be present, be consistent. Be present and be consistent for whomever the rep is. And no, we can't mail it in. We can't just say, hey, I'm going to order an Amazon thing and send it over to them, or here's a gift card to send over. People create relationships by seeing and physically pressing the flesh, whether we like it or not. It makes a big difference, especially in that arena. What do you guys think about attending the conference trade shows and that sort of thing? Susan, Brad, you've had experience. Neil, you've had experience with that. What is your thought on that for photographers?
We tend to get more yearbook leads from those shows in the past few years. I'm going to age myself here, but we all remember when trade shows were a big thing because we didn't have something called the internet.
Sure.
But I just got information from one of my Virginia reps. There's one in Virginia Beach. I don't know if Strawbridge goes to that one, but I think we do that every year. Sometimes the PTA shows, again, we seem to get traction in those for the yearbook. And as you know, if you can pick up the yearbook, sometimes that's your gateway in the door. Sure. For the school pictures. But it's a good, they're always good to attend, particularly if they're local. And we have a really simple setup now. We just bring some of those pull-up banners and try and attend some of the local shows.
Wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. We're there. So if you're not, then we are. And it depends on, everyone's going to be different. You've got associations for elementary principals, middle principals, high school, you got superintendent's conferences, you got all the ASBOs, I guess, the Association of School Business Officials. That's where you're going to see your purchasing managers, procurement managers, things like that from districts. But we've had the most success in dealing with, a principals association, because the person who's ahead of that is a retired principal. If you make a relationship with them, they're probably pretty influential. So, hey, it's sometimes, people may like it, may not. It's kind of somewhat who that can open the doors for you in some of those things. So you better believe we're at a lot of conferences.
And to that extent, those are the actual conferences that you would have to go to see multiple folk from a larger geographic area that are coming into that conference. But in a district, depending on the size of the district, there may be a day that's ideal for you to set up a display and offer the coffee and donuts in the morning for the attendees, so that you can get the word out, so they can see what you're doing. And that can take place early in the year. But it's just, you have to just think about what you would do or what you should be doing to create a better mousetrap. Sometimes you got to chum the water. Sometimes you got to do you do various things to get business. And that's what this is all about. This is the business side of the conversation, not the photo side, not how pretty the pictures are, because we're all capable of taking beautiful pictures. This is the business side, and they separate, and it really separates the larger from the smaller entities when you start to consider all of the things that you guys have shared with us. Any other information that you guys might want to be willing to share at this time?
Well, I'll just say Calvin, I'll say on conventions, I agree with Susan that especially if you're interested this year, PTAs are probably the way to go. They typically are later in the season. Most PTAs, again, typically shouldn't be making a decision for school photographer for the next incoming president. That president has to make their own decision. So that usually takes place at the end of May-ish. So it's a great avenue still to get leads. And if you haven't attended, and by state it's different, every state's different, but it's also a good place if you're new and upcoming, and to attend these things is a great way to meet your competitors, see how they brand themselves and what they're marketing, just make you more aware and stronger as a school photographer.
Outstanding. Anything else that we can give people just some nuggets that they can carry with them, literally hitting the streets tomorrow? What is it that they need to do, in your opinions?
Kate,
run.
I was thinking, and you guys like, okay, what would I do? In my opinion, if I could tell you one thing to do right now to get new business for next year, if we would say, outside of your normal stopping in phone calls, my piece of advice would be to think about volume, because this time of year, as we stated, there's a lot of schools that have already made their decision, and you're really just trying to find the ones that aren't there yet. Like Brad said, the ones that the PTA makes the decision, or maybe an RFP it goes out this time of year. I know our team's busy with that. The more phone calls you make, the more stopping in schools you have. I feel like if you just really try to expand the amount of schools you're hitting a day, that would help you find those pockets of opportunity still.
right? I think it's a great point, Kate, because we there's two buckets we pursue. One is the long game. I'll tell a rep, okay, this district, this is the long game. It's going to take a couple years. It's going to take you stopping in here a lot to get these schools to leave their vendor that they're very happy with. So, and then you have, to Kate's point, I call it sometimes just calling in a straight line. Just this time of year, let's just hit, you're just really looking for the schools that aren't rebooked, where there's an opportunity, and maybe they're a little unhappy. So it's volume. It's just so those long-term, long game relationship building accounts that you're trying to get, those kind of, you start prospecting for those, working on those in September, but now this time of year, it's volume 100%. And we're fortunate enough to be in metropolitan areas where, we can make phone calls all day long.
Yeah. For me, I would say organization is the biggest thing for us. If you're in a big area, you walk into ABC Elementary and you don't get to see the decision maker. It's your first time there, but you meet Becky behind the desk and you talk about Becky's grandkids and you get to learn a little bit about Becky. Come back out to your car and write down everything you learned about Becky, because on the second trip, you want to go in and see Becky again and talk about her grandkids. Every time you go into that school, you're taking some bit of information away that is going to bring up a conversation the next time you're there. And it's going to endear you to those people that could be a gatekeeper that won't let you meet the principal. But they'd say, Neil, he's a nice guy. He asks about my grandkids and their baseball team every time he visits. So, Miss Smith, I like this guy. Can we talk to him? And so if you're not keeping records, whether it be in a CRM or, heck, pen and paper for every time you visit a school to know what you've done and what you've learned, then you got to meet Becky every single time and forget that she has grandkids. So note everything, the date you were there, what you learned. She might tell you who's doing their pictures. She might have an envelope under the counter from pictures last month and you take it. So just start, again, forming those relationships by meeting the people, whatever information you can take away from them, make sure you keep it and use it as a resource.
I think that's a real critical one. We don't realize so many people are shy. They're gun shy. They don't like to introduce themselves. They don't want to come across as overly aggressive, et cetera, which are all, no, none of us do. But the conversations oftentimes that take place when you get into the room with an individual or a couple of individuals, administrators at a school, and you look at the walls and they give you hints on things that they're proud of. If it's their family, if it's their kid, if it's, whatever their thing that they're involved in. What are they proud of? Those are things that break the conversation or take the conversation away from a sales call to a personable call. And the reality is people want to talk and do business with their friends. And if you come across as the friend, as Neil is pointing out in this exercise, if you're coming across as a friend, certainly some people would say it's manipulative. No, it's not. You know details about a friend. And if somebody's going to be a friend, you want to know details about them before they become a friend. So the reality is it's not deceitful or otherwise. It's just a matter of create an environment that you're in conversation, not in sales pitchy. I think that's one of the thing that I would take away from that. Corey popped in for a moment, or maybe that's just because I see her on my screen. But if I'm going to ask a question on behalf of some new folks that was sent to me. If you're brand new to the business, how do you go about gathering the information about schools so you know what they might need? Well, if you're brand new to the business, you need to be coming to SPAC every year for the next 5 years. And that's not a plug for SPAC. That's a plug for your education. And it doesn't mean that you don't get to start doing business for 5 years. I'm just saying that you're going to get answers to this type of question through your engagement with other folks. But I'm going to put it to the table. Susan, jump on it first.
Well, so what was how do you find out what the schools need or find out?
Yeah, as a newbie, how do you find out about what the schools actually need?
When you first asked that question, I was going to recommend to a newbie, if nobody's heard of Niche, NICHE.com. It's a great tool that gives you statistics on a school or a school district. They're rated everything from A, B, C, D, E, F. But the rating system also, it's not just necessarily geared towards the academics of the school. It rates the housing costs, how easy it is to find a job in a particular area. So if, for example, you're prospecting in an area that's more affluent than another area, if a school has money and resources, then maybe your focus should be more on service and customer service. Whereas in a less affluent area, you might assume that they are going to want all the free stuff. They're going to like the fact that you're giving them complimentary certificates. So a lot of it, I think, is demographics. And I think Niche is a great tool to kind of give you the statistics of the school, the area, the rating of the school. So you have some sense of where to kind of go in and steer your presentation. Kate, anything to add to that? I made Kate get on here, so I wanted to talk.
Justify that time, okay?
If I was brand new to this industry, which I still am, I've only been with Barksdale for 4 years, and this is a second career for myself. But if I was brand new and wasn't working with a company the size of Barksdale, I would kind of take advice that Susan gave me. You know, if this is where you are, kind of draw a 2-hour circle around yourself and identify all of the schools in that 2-hour circle around you, districts, private schools, whatever you can. If you aren't at the caliber yet that you would have like some type of data system, keeping yourself organized is so easy now with Microsoft or even Google with the documents that you could keep track of. Okay, if I'm going to Pendelco School District that's down the street from me, creating an Excel spreadsheet of maybe what schools are in Pendelco School District, who my key players are there, who they're currently with, and I think Neil said kind of gathering some information if you stopped in about the person you talked to. That's where I would start, because my time with Barksdale, constantly referring to my notes and who I spoke to and where they're at in the decision-making process helped me sell in my first year with the company. And definitely, kind of winging it would be a little challenging, I think.
It is always more of a challenge than people perceive. Have a plan. You don't go to the game without a plan. At least, pickup basketball is one thing. Team basketball is something else. Neil, you got anything on that?
Well, I think the philosopher Mike Tyson said everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. I don't know exactly what he meant by that. I've never been punched in the mouth either. So, hey, it takes a lot of research, whether you're going to you're just getting into this business, or if you're a company the size of any of us that are on here and you're going into a new market. So we're on the phones a lot. Our inside sales team is trying to figure out, okay, which cities would be a good fit for us, where we have the least competition or the fewest number of companies that are already there. So it's just doing your homework. The thing that scares me the most is, being a part of a lot of, volume photography Facebook groups, is seeing the person on there that says, I just booked my first school. Now what? And I'm like, oh man, that's a recipe for, that's going to be trouble. So, hey, do your homework and learn the craft, number one, of what does it take to be a good school photographer. And the needs of the schools are really going to differ. What's important to them is going to differ regionally. It could be everybody in Minnesota wants composites, while everybody, in North Carolina wants a lot of money. So it really varies. So you've really just got to do your homework.
I can't disagree, sir. I can't disagree. There's also the determination as to who are the decision makers. Your questions would lead you to figuring out where and who is the actual person that can make a decision on doing school pictures. It could be PTA, it could be the principal, it could be a vice president, it could be the office manager that makes that decision. Oftentimes I find it to be the office manager has the greatest influence, because she's the one that fields the calls that come through if there are any problems. She's the one. And remember, because you have one problem, it's magnified times the number of people it impacts, and all of the people that it impacts make the call, so or do the complaining. So it's just something that we have to live with.
Calvin, can I expand on that? I think that's a great point by you, that a lot of people that are just starting out always believe it's the principal, so they are always trying to get around that secretary, and you may be tricky at it, but in the end, it never pays off. You have to become friends with that secretary. That secretary will move you forward when you're ready to meet the principal and make the decision maker. You know, a lot of schools have similar services. It's the gray area around them that matters. And to learn what the issues might be requires you to be a good listener and to hear the little cues of didn't come in on time, wasn't sorted correctly, upset teachers, you know, several phone calls from parents. These are little things that you pick up on that you dig in a little deeper on. What do you mean by that? How did that affect you? How did that affect the school? And those are the things that you get second and third tier questions, and that's what you'll end up presenting to at some point.
Agreed, 100%. Let me run down a quick list so that we can just recap. Sales season is year-round. It does not stop. We need to sell all year long. Even right now is a good time to sell. And remember, when you're selling, if you're not getting the account, you're planting the seeds. And that's kind of like the idea of the friendship that's been talked about. Develop a friendship with that gatekeeper, that office manager, secretary, whatever we want to give them as a title. That's planting seeds that will germinate eventually. And you need to have those seeds planted so that when there's the problem, you can go and sprinkle water on it and it'll pop up out of the ground and make you happy. Develop a story. What is your story? Why are you doing this? How does your story benefit the school? They really don't want to hear your life story, but they do want to hear a story. People remember stories. So package a story about why you're doing and how you do with your company on behalf of the school. So work on the narrative there. Solve the challenges. What are the challenges? And provide your value proposition on the basis of what you've identified as to be their challenges. You know, we all look for a solution provider. Who can solve my problem? That's the first person I want to call. The photographer. He doesn't. He just takes our pictures. No, I know this guy takes care of everything for us. Let me give him a call and see if we can make this happen. And that's for paid for services, etc. I'm not speaking of give away the store. Show up and make friends. Get feet on the street. Kate, I just took yours and just changed it to feet on the street, especially if you're in a smaller market. When you make a delivery, there's probably a school or two in the direction that you're going, or on the way back. You plan your route accordingly and you hit those schools. So on one or two deliveries, you could end up hitting 5 or 6 schools. Have your sales kit, whatever that might be, your drop-off piece ready to go at all times so that you can walk in and say, hi, I am who I am. Being consistency, show up and make friends. Once a month, it shows consistency. If you're going to be canvassing on a regular, you're going to develop those friendships. Conferences, PTA might be one of the best ones for so many people. There are a lot of different types of conferences that you can go to. Of course, the cost of setting up at those conferences, the registration fees are something that has to be factored into the potential business that you might garner from that particular conference. Also, what's the region that people are coming from for that conference? If it's a nationwide conference, it's a lot more difficult for so many of the smaller operators that don't have nationwide penetration or even half the country penetration. It's a lot more difficult, and the price for being at that show is a lot higher. It's more ideal that you actually have clients that are going to be attending the conference so that you have a go-to as a reference that's standing right there or in the conference area. Think volume. I'm not sure what I said about that, but think volume. I think Kate, you did that. You said that, and I believe that's more of you have to think about how to grow the business. Just thinking about growing the business at all times. It might be that you've saturated the market on what you can actually photograph during a season, the number of photo dates and that sort of thing. Guess what? Yearbooks can be sold because yearbooks are produced later on in the year. So there's a piece of business that you're passing up simply because you're not realizing there's different sectors that can be sold at different times and that actually require work at different times of the year. And then niche.com, that's a website Susan Barksdale hit us with, and it gives you some demographic and data that's been gathered regarding schools and the communities in which those schools are. You can learn from there which schools are a Title I dominant, which schools have, special ed, special needs kids, which schools has higher populations of the preschool, first grade, second grade, which are your biggest buyers in the elementary school market. So using the data sources that we have at our disposal, we can get that information before we even walk in or before we prepare our sales kit and information. And then lastly, do your homework and have a plan. It's not just spray and pray out here anymore, folks. You got to be targeted and you've got to be solid with the message that you give. So tell the story, but do your homework before you start telling the story. Make the story fit their needs. And trust me, your story and the things that you've done in your career and your life, you may have something that they don't even think about that really presents itself and makes them say, hey, I get it. This guy gets it. This woman gets it. I think I'd like to do business with them. So those are the things that I take away from here in a quick note fashion. Anybody got something else to add on it?
I got one last thing to
one
put
more
back
thing.
on you, Calvin, that at SPAC, there's always some sort of sales training or sales presentation, and you'll get that valuable information in the month of January, and that'll be faster than this discussion today to get on top of things.
And if the cost of SPAC surprises you,
Yeah.
the value of the information you would get in simply one sales seminar for a full day in one of the pre-cons, you will generate many times multiples of whatever you paid for that. I heard someone else, it was a lady's voice, so someone was going to say something. I don't know who it was.
It was Kate.
It was Kate. There you go.
Yeah, one thing I just realized that Susan and I have been utilizing to help us constantly keep our sales mind going is, if you're a photographer on this call and you don't have a sales team and possibly you've never sold before, there is fantastic sales material on social media. There's a girl on TikTok, Selling Sarah. She's fantastic and doing the same things that we're trying to do. If you're telephone prospecting, you're not trying to sell anything over the phone. You're just trying to get the appointment. There's a ton of different videos on YouTube. So if you're not comfortable or maybe don't know where to start, I would definitely utilize social media. So when you're just kind of hanging out at nighttime with nothing to do, if you're just scrolling on TikTok like I am, definitely type in sales, cold calling, and a lot of information comes up.
It's such a good point, because I was training a new person last week, and that's exactly, I said, I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, grabbed my phone and started looking at YouTube videos to share with you. You should be doing that yourself to better yourself. A book, I buy almost all my new salespeople a simple cold calling book for telephone. So educate yourself, to put the hard work in. Yeah, that book right there is a great book for anybody who wants some advice to how to get appointments on the phone.
Go ahead and put the name of the book in the chat, please.
It's an old sales book, but it's continually updated. So.
And I would add, as you're learning, you're going to develop your own style. So I could sit and talk about the 6, 7, 8 steps in the sales process and all that, and you can listen to folks online what works for them, and a lot of great information out there. But I kind of take the grocery store approach to those folks. I don't need everything in the grocery store. I'm gonna take the things that I need, and I'm gonna develop what works for me. And for me, I'm there to interview and learn about that school. I'm gonna pose questions at the beginning of my little presentation, and I'm gonna learn all I can. And then I'll weave little things in about me, hey, yeah, materials, that girl is cute. That's my daughter. Yes, we put her on our stuff. They'll learn enough about me as we go, and what I'm passionate about. But I want to let them do the talking. I ask questions, I shut up, and then I'll address, towards the end, their needs, their wants, and what may have gone wrong.
And I'll just add one thing on that. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I learned from the best, Wayne Barksdale, and I've done it Wayne's way. Wayne's way for years. However, I have recognized that the world has changed. People have very short attention spans. Nobody wants to listen to a 30-minute presentation. So I think what Kate's saying is we're trying in our sales approach to stay current and relevant. And, you know, it's no offense, but we're, other than Kate, I think we're all a little old here. And to try and have, you know, and that's where TikTok and Instagram and some of these new younger people with new younger approaches, we can learn from them.
I don't know about that little bit old thing there. I don't know.
Sorry.
I dyed this white just for, on purpose. Yeah.
Well, I took care of that a
That's
long
part of the
time ago,
sales.
Gil.
Well, it either turns gray or it turns loose, right, Calvin?
That's correct. Follically challenged. All right, folks, this has been a good discussion. I really appreciate it. I certainly hope that our attendees and those that tune in to this and when they do get a chance to view it will find value in it. Both topics, the process of that new introduction of GovMVNT. Look on the site. You can see what the RFP was. You can see what light touches responses were, and you can understand it. But do understand that while that's the written form, there's a lot of unwritten things that happen in a school, as we all know. We have relationships, and they ask for stuff, and we have to make it work. Corey, do we have any new announcements for today?
Well, I just want to bring to the table, we had a great discussion today about school and the sales process. And we're going to follow this up on April 29th. That's 2 weeks from now, 2 o'clock, same time. We'll be talking about RFPs. What do you include? What are they looking for? And perhaps talking a little bit more about this co-op that you guys mentioned earlier. The other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is SPAC's Young Creative Scholarship for high school seniors. The deadline for that is May 15th. We have sent out information and graphics. We've even created a flyer with a box at the bottom so that you can put your name in there. Because one of the questions we do ask is, how did you hear about the scholarship? So basically, the scholarship is geared towards a high school senior who perhaps is obviously photography related, maybe a yearbook advisor, maybe someone who's very involved in the yearbook. Anything in those kind of elements is what we're talking about. Scholarship provides them $1,500 cash, as well as a camera and a camera kit. We are providing 2 scholarships per region, East Coast, Central, and West Coast. They do not have to be from any of your schools that you currently have. So this is a good opportunity to drop off a flyer, even if you don't have that school, to let them know that they're allowed to apply. You only have to live in the United States, be a high school senior. We have a quick Google form. We ask for 2 recommendations, one being from a teacher and advisor. We ask for their transcript. We're not looking for a certain minimum of GPA. So this is also really great for some of those young creatives out there who are not taking the AP math class, but they're really very, very talented behind the camera. That's what this is geared towards. We're looking at a way.
Okay.
Do we have a marketing piece
there? You will see another email sent out.
Share with our schools, Corey?
Yes. Yeah, that is going to be coming out via email, as well as it's posted on our Facebook page, as well as our website, www.spac-usa.org. And the deadline for that is May 15th. So that way we can have the decisions made. The goal is to send the big check with the camera out to whoever sent them the lead so that we could get a photo back. We had 3 scholarship recipients last year, and we're looking to double it this year. Also, the other mention I would like to bring is May 1st is when we will be opening our period for sending your speaking proposals for SPAC 2026. So we've got like 3 months. We don't need your whole detailed presentation right now. We just need to know nuts and bolts of what you're going to cover. And that way that we can submit it to our educational advisory group so they can start sorting the information and selecting speakers for SPAC 2026, which is not that far off.
It's amazing how soon it is. Oh my God. The number of contracts and agreements that we have to go through this early to make sure everything is in place is staggering. Thank you, Corey. Just
You're welcome.
for a signature. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us. If there's no more to say, we got to say good night. Have a great day, a great season, and just put your feet, as Kate said, feet on the street. That's going to make a big difference for everybody. Be there, make friends, make sales. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Calvin.
Bye,
Thanks, Corey.
everybody. Thank you, everybody.